Welcome to Albuquerque UFO UAP Explorations. My name is Birdie, and I am excited about today's guest, JoAnn Fawcett. Born and raised in California and now a proud resident of Portland, Oregon, JoAnn's life story reads like an adventurous novel, filled with diverse experiences, achievements, and personal growth. For over 40 years, JoAnn excelled as a bookkeeper, a profession she dedicated herself to with passion and precision. Her academic background, with degrees in film production and accounting, underscores a life marked by an unquenchable thirst for knowledge and an unwavering commitment to her career. As a mother and grandmother, she cherishes her family above all. Her beloved cats, Winston and Princess Charlotte, bring a touch of whimsy and comfort to her daily routine. Midlife Magic, JoAnn's memoir published in 2021, peels back the layers of her rich life story, revealing a tapestry woven from her suburban roots, the challenges of multiple marriages, and a particularly transformative period as the wife of a prisoner. But it is her connection to Captain Mark Richards, an ex-husband with ties to military operations, that catapulted JoAnn into the heart of the UFO phenomenon. Once a skeptic, JoAnn's curiosity was piqued by her exposure to the enigmatic world of UFO sightings and alien encounters. This exploration led to a profound spiritual awakening, opening her eyes to the wonders of the universe and her own latent inner strength. Let's voyage into the unknown as we explore the magical life of JoAnn Fawcett and the captivating tales of midlife magic. Hey, JoAnn, it's so great to have you here. Thank you so much for coming and talking to our group and to the world at large.
Thank you so much. And I'm crying. That was such a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's
Wow.
my pleasure.
That was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Very
Thank
kind.
you.
Yes.
Yeah, I like to make sure that everybody knows who our guests are and why they're important in this conversation. So
Thank
many
you.
things are happening in the whole world of UFOs and paranormal and just generally in the whole world of consciousness raising that is
Exactly.
important right now. And I feel that you are a valid voice in this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do my part.
Oh, good. So tell me, why don't you start from the beginning and tell me about your early life and what is happening.
When I grew up in Southern California, and in the 50s and 60s, there were Martian movies, Anyway, we watched Martian movies and thought nothing about the reality that was probably portraying, even in their cheesy way. But I just didn't give it another thought, and so I didn't give it another thought until I met Mark, and then slowly, he was slowly introducing me to that topic. And oh, by the way, this is what I did in the military. So I had a college education about space science and the reality of aliens and the reality that we do go into space, and the military does a lot of things in space, and there's hundreds of species out there, friendly and not friendly, and I just loved learning about it, and it was just opened up my eyes to all this stuff. And then all of a sudden I'm talking about it, and I'm at expos and conferences and sharing information with people, and I couldn't get enough.
Yeah.
So it's good. So I've had my own personal UFO sightings, so it's not like I was just spitting out information provided to me. I could say I've seen several UFOs, and this is very real to me. So
oh man, that's so exciting. I know that one of the things that people tuning in are really curious about are your marriages.
Just call me Jaja.
Yeah, Exactly, exactly. You are, yeah. You're the Elizabeth Taylor of our time here. So
Yeah, yeah, we're taught. I
give
mean,
us some good gossip here, lady.
okay, well, I grew up in the 50s watching Donna Reed, Leave It to Beaver, all those, white picket fence TV shows and the Happy Family and all that good stuff. And mom gets to stay home and raise the kids. And I'm the third of fourth children. And for the most part, my parents,
Wow.
my dad worked and my mom did stay at home until they were separated for a little while. But, our our family, I mean, there was a lot of happy memories, but there was a lot of
Yeah.
dysfunction in like there is in every family. So I learned to be a codependent because there was a lot of alcoholism in my family. And
Right.
you learn to enable and take care of and cover and whatever. But then I joined the Mormon church, and I was a Mormon for like 30 years. So um the goal is to find Mr. Right, get married forever,
Right.
have a bunch of kids, and stay home if you can. That your career is your being the mom. And I thought, oh great, this is great. I love this. And I love the family values, but I did leave the church later after 30 years because I just didn't need it anymore. But I thought, okay, I'm gonna marry Mr. Right and I'm gonna have this happy family. And but there's also they don't teach you, well, you should really talk about a whole bunch of stuff before you get married, and you should be on the same page about a lot of things. And um but you can't have sex before marriage, and you can't live with each other before marriage. So if you're in your 20s and your hormones are raging, then you just kind of feel like you
Right.
ought to get married. Um so I met five of my seven husbands were Mormons. The father of my daughter was not, but I met him at a Mormon activity because his sister was Mormon.
Wow.
If you just meet a nice Mormon girl, your whole life will be fine. But I only had the one kid, and fertility was not in the cards for me. On Yeah, so I mean, but that worked out in my favor. And I picked the wrong men. I would meet these guys at dances. It was hot and heavy, and we were having fun dating, and we'd go to church. So okay, if you're going to church, the same church, and you believe in these things, that doesn't necessarily mean how you look like at church is how you're going to look like at home. That doesn't mean
Right.
you're going to be a nice guy at home and that you won't hit your wife and kid. It doesn't mean you're not going to drain your wife's bank accounts and cause her to go bankrupt. So I married a lot of not great people, made a lot of bad choices, and put my daughter through hell because of that. And
Yeah.
thankfully, she and I are good now. But she went through some bad stepfathers, and one was particularly physically abusive, and that just wasn't a
Mm.
good scene. And we left. But there's certain wounds that take a long time to heal. But
Yes. Yes.
through it all, I did learn a lot of lessons. And then I met Mark Richards, and we were together 25 years, married for 20. And
Wow.
yeah. So that was a really long time. And I didn't realize it was not the best choice until I was into it for 20 years. And it was, but I started realizing it before COVID hit. But then it's just, it wasn't, we weren't going to resolve our issues. I'll just say that that'll be book number two. He's very much the military hero, but he's very much a narcissist. So book number two is all about dealing with a narcissist. So yeah, that'll be coming out in June. So it's just, it's a lot of bad choices, but I learned to stand up for myself. And I learned that I am this amazing person, even though none of those men felt like I was. And I have great gifts and strengths and wisdom to share with people. And I've learned how to heal from my past. And I want to help others realize, even though you've made these mistakes, you can move on, you can improve your life. It's never too late to change your path. I'm going to retire later this year, but there's more things I want to do. So it's like, it's like
Absolutely.
I want to move into a different thing and help more people. I grew up learning to serve people, whether in the church or in the scouts. My whole family, we were into scouts, but so you learn to serve. And that's who I am. So it also makes it easier for you to be a codependent that way. So that doesn't work well in all your relationships.
Yeah.
But again, it's like it's never too late to help yourself. And if you're in a bad situation, you either need to find a way to resolve it or heal from it and get the heck out. So
Yeah, I like how you're talking about this. I mean, we have all been in codependent relationships. I think every single person on this planet has been
mm-hmm.
in one or another, whether it's a mother, a father, a sibling, a friend, a partner,
Yeah.
husband, wife, what have you. We have all been in that kind of position where we're trying to help that person. Maybe they feel they're trying to help us, but it's a downward spiral. And that's really hard to deal with. And I think that, you and I, we're of a similar age. And I think that a lot of women of our age, we have really been through the gamut. We, you know, became adults in a time when women did not have all of the same kinds of expectations and rights that we have today. I mean, it's not
Correct.
like it was the time of the suffragette movement, but I remember I remember being in my young adulthood and having guys at whatever work I was at pinch my butt, call me
Oh wow.
honey, you
Uh-huh.
know,
Yeah, I'm
ask
used
me.
to the calling the honey part, but nobody ever pinched my butt, thankfully.
Oh, well, you're lucky. I don't even have a good butt.
I'm sure it's fine. But
It's
but
kind of
you know,
flat. But it's like, you and I kind of grew up at the same time, and
yeah,
so it was harder, I think, than young women realize today.
right.
Growing up and having a career and being your own person, and you're expected. You fell into the Mormon faith,
Right.
which has a very interesting theology when we get to the UFO section shortly. But
Yes.
and I grew up Catholic in a very Catholic home, and that there's that implication that you'll be a good wife and a good mother, and sometimes maybe that isn't what you want to be, or maybe you want to be those things, but you want to be something else too. So
Yeah.
it's so I
Well, and
applaud you
two,
for recognizing.
thank you. And it's
Yeah.
interesting because for a long time that's all I wanted to do. And okay,
Yeah.
now it's like, and it's like, okay, get married again. Should we have kids? Some of them wanted them, some of them didn't. But
Right.
I fertility was an issue for me. But it was, I didn't know that there was more for me to do until I was done with 6 of them. It's like, okay, I'm going to go back to
Right.
school. I'm finally going to get the degrees, and I got two degrees, and oh look, I know how to make films. Isn't that fun? I've never used it, but I know how to make films. Look, I've got my accounting. Well, I have my 2-year accounting degree, but it served me well. I've been a bookkeeper
Yes.
for over 40 years, and I run my own business. And at least I can say I am an example. I mean, my daughter's also self-employed, so it's like that kind of runs. But it's like
Right.
I think I've now finally a really good example to her and to my granddaughters of like, you can pretty much do what you want to do.
Right.
And relationships certainly can be a part of that. But again, it's funny because I've been on these dating apps, and it's like I'll just tell the guys, it's like I'm very transparent about what I want, and I have a bucket list.
Right.
So do you want to hear it or not? Some are totally turned off by that, but
Good
but
for you. Good for you.
it's like it was like kind of like survival because I just I can't do another horrible marriage or long-term relationship. I just that's just I've got too much life, and I could be your big sister. I'm going to be 70 this year, so it's like I have too much living to do to get sucked down into another bad relationship. So there's no time for that. It's just all about
Yeah.
fun and having you know not anyway not I'm not a party girl, but I it's time to have some fun.
Oh,
Just enjoy my life and be around people
it
that
is.
get me. So
Good. Good.
yeah, yeah,
So you
yeah,
had
but
this really interesting, kind of almost conservative early life in the
yes.
Mormon church and
Well,
marrying a
and
number
even
of
my
men.
family, they were very conservative growing up. So yeah,
Yeah, mine was too. Mine was
yeah.
too. I can relate to that. So how in the world did you fall into UFOs?
Well, again, I met Mark, and it wasn't until we'd been together for several years, and then finally he started sending me some. I'd started a little publishing company, and he started sending me information. Um, and I didn't know. I thought it was just like a book. Here's a manuscript I've
Yeah.
written, but it was about one of his space missions. And I'm going, huh? Okay, you've been in space, and you're talking about people that are famous in the space program, and you're talking about meeting aliens and having a space battle and nearly dying. So then we started having this discussion about, okay, is this stuff real? And it turns out it was. And he and his dad were very involved in the military space program. And it just was fascinating to me. And so, like, I think 2004, he said, well, why don't there's going to be a UFO convention down in the San Jose area, Santa Clara, where
Okay.
they used to hold a really big one there. And why don't you just go check it out? And by the way, see if anybody's talking about reptilians. It's like, okay, I don't know why, but okay.
Reptilians now.
Yeah. And so I went, and I was totally fascinated. I go, oh, this stuff is really cool. This is really fascinating. And yes, somebody was talking about reptilians. And so then by the next year, he'd given me enough information, a little bit more, so that I could go have a booth at that conference and share the basics with people
Ah,
coming to the booth. And most of the people were very interested. And some people, there was only one couple that rolled their eyes at me, but I figured they were, the Men in Black type. They look like Ken and Barbie, I tell you. But the kind of Men in Black who, are sent to go to these conferences and see what's happening. But from there, it just kind of blossomed, and he kept providing more information about different species and different missions he'd been on and different things
right.
in space. And I started getting on radio shows, because I don't think anybody was doing podcasts then, or we didn't know they were. They're
Right.
just called radio shows. And then I went to England to speak at my first conference in 2007. And from there, so I was speaking in England before I ever spoke at an in-person conference in the United States. But then it all kind of,
Wow.
then I was speaking fairly regularly. But and some people believed me, and some people didn't. It's like, I don't care. I know what I know. I know what I'm hearing is the truth, and this is all. And it's because most people are not able to share from the military perspective. So I felt good
Right.
about, and he was not allowed to share everything. And he couldn't tell me anything that would land him in federal military prison, because it would have broken his secrecy oath. So he was very careful, but he did share quite a bit. So I'm really lucky about that. And I was told, when you go to England, you can't mention specific names or you will be arrested. It's like, okay, I'll wait till I'm in a private group or back in the United States and say, did you know, you know, the Queen and all the
Wow.
royal family, they're all involved with the space program. And Prince Philip was head of the British space program and blah, blah, blah. And Prince Charles has seen aliens. So,
Okay,
there's
this is getting fascinating, ladies. So I want specifics. Now tell me, like, break it down. What's actually
okay.
happening out there with the secret space program? A lot of people have talked about this over the years. There's been a number of whistleblowers
Right.
and witnesses who have talked about this. And so tell me what you found out.
Well, and it took me years before I realized there's more than one space program going on. It's like, oh, they have one, and they have one, and they have one. The one that Mark and his dad were involved with, I mean, they both worked for the US military, different branches. And then
Right.
I think Mark started in the Army, then he was in the Navy, and his dad was always Air Force. But in 1947, the UN created an international intelligence agency called International
Yeah.
Security. So
Okay.
Admiral Nimitz ran that till he died in the 60s, and then my father-in-law took it over. But nobody could know. So, all of a sudden you're not on the track to go to the Pentagon. All of a sudden you're resigning from the Air Force and, secretly
Right.
taking over this other thing. So, like, when there were threats against the planet, various countries would come together and work together. And so, like, and they built, the scientists and stuff built spacecraft. I think they
Right.
started in the 40s, but they were designed like in the 40s and stuff, but they were built in the late 50s, and they were designed to go in space. They had a whole fleet of these things. They were like battleship size, and originally they
Wow.
were They were propelled by nuclear bombs, so that was the reason why people were still stockpiling nuclear bombs but not dropping them on each other. But so like when there was a threat against the planet, China and Russia and Japan and France and Germany and the United States and certain corporations who had funded the building of these spacecraft and
Right.
supported them, they all worked together to go out into space to deal with the threat, the invading fleet that was coming in from who knows where. So it's like,
Right.
and that happened many times. I only know about 2 or 3 of those, but it happened over and over. So like I tell people, in the 1970s, when I was a teenager and dancing in a church dance festival at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, there's an invasion fleet coming in from space, and this group had to deal with it. And it's like, you never knew. You just never knew.
Wow.
Yeah. And I know that one of the reports I have, when Mark was little, 1961, because we know now that our presidents have met with aliens from way before the 60s, and we were going out into space before the 60s, so we just couldn't tell anybody. But in 1961, I think Mark was 7, just about to turn 8, and there was an interstellar treaty conference held in southern England that President Kennedy and the British Prime Minister authorized for it to happen. Then President Kennedy went home, and he wasn't there, but Vice President Johnson and all these political leaders and state leaders and royalty and military leaders and political figures, they all came, and they had this treaty conference and with 100 species of aliens, and it was all these committee
Wow.
meetings discussing, well, do we let the humans go out into space? Can we sell them our used spacecraft? Can we attack Earth? Or how many people can we kidnap for our own agenda? Do we let the humans defend their planet? Should we allow them to defend their planet? And lots of discussions. And it's interesting. Now, see, this is where it gets really interesting for me, because you had aliens. So I'm getting excited. Sorry. You
No,
have
I
aliens.
love it. Are you kidding? I want to
I
hear all
know, like,
this.
you have aliens coming in from the ocean, because some of them live there. You have
Right.
aliens coming through dimensional portals, because that's how they travel. You have aliens showing up at air bases in their spacecraft and landing. And you had, besides the committee meetings to discuss creating a treaty, you now have to say, well, how do I feed these guys? Where are these going to stay while I'm here? These don't get along, so they can't be together in the same room, let alone in a castle staying together. So you've got certain reptilians staying in this castle, and I've been to that place and I've seen where they would have eaten. And for the oceanic species, they had to like build huge tanks and stuff for them to like basically sit there to listen to the proceedings. And also they would, how do you feed them? What, you got to provide food. It's like all the logistical planning. It's amazing. But Mark said there were like at least 100 species. And the one after that, 10 years later in Iran, there were like 200 species, because all the aliens had heard about it.
Holy
And
cow.
I know, it was fascinating. And some of the delegates brought their kids, so he got to play with the kids. He and his little British girlfriend were
Ah.
allowed to be there, and they hung out with little alien kids and had a blast. Prince Charles was there as a teenager. He was there for the opening ceremonies, and then he stayed. And it's like, I think, well, anyway, so he'll probably never he won't admit it publicly. We know this, but he met aliens. Aliens came and went in Britain and met with key leaders. I
There
know
are all those stories about the British royalty. I
they're
mean,
not reptilian.
going back decades about, well, not just the reptilian
Right.
things from David Icke and others, but also just generally that they've had, their finger on the pulse of what's going on with contact, just like uh, our leaders in the United States have had.
Right. Right.
So that would not surprise me one bit. Okay, but
No.
JoAnn, I have to
Yeah.
know,
Okay.
what did the aliens want to eat?
Well,
Were they handing out ham sandwiches, or
probably not. It
it's
depends on
got to
what
be
you
pretty
are.
complicated.
It
Yeah.
depends on what you are. And like, there's one species that he got to play with one of their kids. They're a gaseous species,
Oh,
and
interesting.
and they live on ammonia and methane. So this one little
Wow.
little child, and when they're in a group, they look like a big cloud. So, but as a
Oh,
I have a picture of one, they're so beautiful. As a single
wow.
being, it's like this blue, oily blob, and it's just beautiful. So one of the kids
Wow.
came ahead of the adults, played with the kids, but also gave a message to the adults there. And they would, and it was like enclosed kind of in some kind of bubble or something, and they'd put a
Yeah.
tube through it to give it its methane and ammonia so it could eat. Now the now every
Wow. That's
I
so
know,
interesting.
I know, and
Wow.
and they would talk to it, like, with telepathies, like, you had to be able to do ESP
Okay.
with them. So, now I always do my disclaimer, the reptilians, there's many species, so we don't lump them all
Yes.
in one group. Some are friendly, some are not. Our military has been working with this. We call them the Raptors. We've been working with them since 1952 when they came to Earth and met with my father-in-law and other military officers at Hamilton Air Force Base in Nevada, California. Um, and Mark's been friends with them for a long time, and they still work currently with our military to help preserve this planet and keep this planet safe because this is their home world, even though their empire basically mostly lives out in space. They've, totally got a huge empire out there, but they have some bases still on Earth. But Mark got to meet two of the delegates' kids. Prince Naga brought a couple of his kids, and now that daughter is their empress. And they're like the most fascinating creatures. Like they look like
Wow.
velociraptors. So please watch Jurassic World. Not, I mean, Park is good, but World is just the velociraptors are just like that. But they like to eat live food. And they've learned, and so this is where
Oh,
I'm going with the story, the feeding. Some of them have learned to eat human cooked food and candy and, junk food and stuff. But they really like live food, sheep, deer. So,
wow.
and they stayed at this place called Castle Drogo. Somebody, I think he was like the first big, supermarket guy in Britain. He built this big manor house to look like a castle, and it's beautiful. I've been there, it's fabulous. And this is where the raptors stayed, but they couldn't stand the smell of cooked food. And the humans, you don't want to watch a raptor eat because it's pretty messy. And you know, so there's a big dining room. So the humans all sat in there, and there's a patio off of the dining room. And again, I've seen it. And according to Mark's report, it's like, they brought in the sheep or the deer, and the raptors ate outside. Otherwise, everybody's going to get
Wow.
sick. But there's also fun stories like the kids, they would overeat the ice cream or the soda and then just vomit because they didn't know how to stop eating. But everybody eats different things.
Right.
They weren't allowed to eat people while they were there. Some of them were still doing that. But, yeah.
Okay, when you say weren't allowed, it sounds like maybe they were doing that on the side.
They might have been, I don't know, but the Raptors, I mean, used to do that regularly before their emperor
Oh,
said, "Okay, now it's time to try and be allies with these silly humans." And you have to remember, even in 1961, because like it was interesting to see the report about the conversations Mark and Titania would have with these alien children. It's like, they knew so much about space, and they were teaching these kids so much about space, and it's fascinating. And also about, it's like, you guys have been coming out to space for a lot longer than now, and the kids didn't know. And but the thing is, our civilization is so much younger than all these alien civilizations that it's like they didn't many of the species could not accept that we were sentient beings. It's like, yeah, I don't
wow.
know. So they were very hesitant. And you had all these like political leaders going, and most of them had never seen an alien, let alone probably,
Sure.
they didn't all believe in aliens, but here they are having meetings with aliens. And it's just fascinating. And again, I said 10 years later, they had the next big one in Iran. And by then, Mark was a young adult. So he was working with the security team. And, it's just, it's totally fascinating. And one of the things that came out of that 1961 conference was they put a ban on communication between civilians and aliens. So
Huh.
even though some people, might see them and talk to them in dreams and meditation and private things, it's like if you and I decided to sit down and have tea with our friends, the Raptors, we could get arrested. So I just need to live out in the country so that can happen.
Wow.
But
Okay, so
and
that's
that
really interesting.
and that's been
That
going on since then because they keep renewing that part of the treaty.
yeah, there was a lot of evidence that Eisenhower started the whole
Yes.
treaty process, and so here we are today, all these years later, and I'm kind of wondering, what do you think's going on with disclosure today, and why hasn't this been brought
Not
out
much.
into the open? Yeah, exactly. I think personally, I'm in the it's all smoke and mirrors kind
Yes.
of camp that I
Yeah.
think that they're playing us, to an extent.
I think the
Yeah.
grassroots people like you and me and all the other friends that we have in this community, we're doing more about disclosure than the government because the government has known about aliens for a very, very long time. They know, even from the 70s, they know what's on the moon. They know who has bases on the moon. They know they've got maps of where different aliens live. Do the aliens want us to find them that easily? No. Because number one, we leave a lot of debris and crap out in space. We're not
That's
good on
true.
handling our
That's
trash.
true.
And we shoot first instead of let's be friends. They're not all aliens
Right,
are
right.
unfriendly, and they might look really scary, but they're actually friendly. So we need to be very careful. But and again, I think I was told that the government's excuse was always we just couldn't handle the truth. So that's been their
Right.
excuse all along, and they would fund movies and TV shows to see, okay, are the humans ready to, learn about aliens yet? You got Star Wars, you got Star Trek, and Gene Roddenberry was working with the military. They got a lot of information, you know. So Howard
Yeah,
Hughes
I
knew
have
all
heard
about
that.
the aliens. But it's like they just figured that the general, because obviously there's a lot of people here, and maybe people way over there or here, in hidden places. It's like who knows? You can imagine the majority of people would still be really scared. And number two, it would knock Christianity off its butt. So
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of truth to that. So I'm kind of wondering, what do you think? Who has been in the know as far as presidents
yes.
go since
Oh, all
since
the presidents.
Truman? Do you think all the presidents, Nixon even,
Yeah,
the
everybody,
Bushes? How about
oh,
Trump?
yeah. Yeah, yeah, probably. Because one of the things Mark told me is, like, early on, it's like, right after you get inaugurated, and I don't know the exact about this, but you get
Right.
taken in this room and say, "Here's the deal." But again, the military officers have higher clearance than the president, so they're
Yes.
gonna know way more of the details of what's going on, but they at least tell them this is what's happening. And I think some of them probably, President Carter admitted to seeing UFOs and stuff. So many of them have probably seen something, and many of them have probably. Uh, President Kennedy fully was in the know about aliens. They just can't. You can't go home and tell your people that because you can't. And
Right.
they would leave these conferences knowing we can't go home and tell our people in our country about this. They can't know we have this conference. They can't know this much about the aliens. So it's all, they so I don't know why, because there's so much about it. And even, they have all these congressional hearings, and even with the Navy's footage that they've allowed to be out there, and I've met those wonderful Navy guys with the tic tac stuff, or TikTok, whatever, tic tac. um, but even with this evidence like that, it's like the government still doesn't I mean, oh yeah, we think maybe. It's like, oh, but they've known about it forever. So they just
Yes, they
can't and
have.
won't say, like, I love the movie. I guess it's the Men in Black movies. I just love those. And, I would ask Mark, it's like, okay, that big UN type place where they, take Will Smith and get him going and all these aliens are walking around. He goes, yeah, we have places like that. It's like, huh. And he goes, yeah, in
Huh.
fact, like this building in England, it used to be that building. It's like, huh. And now it's over here that I probably can't really tell you where it is. It's like, huh. So there is that kind of stuff happening. And again, a lot of people, you talk about really tall. blonde, and they're probably aliens. And I've got stories about aliens going to the casinos and having fun and going
Right.
shopping, and there's a lot of humanoid aliens that do mingle. And
Right.
on the funny side, because this, I mean, it's very serious, but it's not all not
Yes.
serious. It's not all not serious. Sometimes when you have like Comic Con or different kinds of conventions and things, Star Trek, when people are in costume
Yes.
anyway, some of the
Yes.
aliens love to go to those, and people just think they're in a great costume. So I think we as the grassroots just need to keep going, because I don't think the government is ever going to really say. And I had a timeline because they were having these conferences, 61, 71. They didn't have
Right.
one in the 80s because of the Falklands. Then they had like the Kyoto Treaty Conference. And so sometimes when you're having an environmental conference, it's really a
Right.
cover for these alien treaty conferences. And
Yes.
when William and Kate got married in 2011, they got married, and all of a sudden there's like a G8 or a G20, whatever they're called, in
Right.
Paris. And, whatever that does, the economic stuff, but it's also a cover for if they had another alien conference. So the conferences are
Oh,
still going on.
interesting.
Yeah, meetings are still happening. Deals are still being made between the military or the governments and big business people. And, big business people get a lot of technology help from aliens. So I'm a firm believer in that.
Wow. So do you think that Kate, have you been following the whole Kate Middleton's disappearance thing in the
No,
news recently?
she's
Oh,
disappeared. Oh,
well,
I love her.
okay. This is actually kind of fascinating from a conspiracy minded perspective. So, in late December, she just kind of dropped off the face of the earth. She didn't go to any of her obligations
Oh,
as,
really?
as a princess, queen in waiting, so to
Uh-huh.
speak. And the palace came out and said that she had to have some serious abdominal surgery. And since
Oh,
then, she's been missing in action. And there's a lot of conspiracies out there about what's actually happened. A
huh.
Spanish reporter has come out and said that she's in a coma.
Oh,
But
God.
the palace hasn't confirmed that. There have been these different kinds of sightings regarding her, but people think it's body doubles or it's not real. And then the palace, or she allegedly posted on her Instagram a photo of her and her three children. And then all of the news sources, the Associated Press, everybody came out and said, this is a Photoshop picture. It's not even real. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, it's kind of interesting. So, I
Oh,
don't know.
I
I'm
hope
not
she's
sure there's
okay.
any alien interaction here, but you brought up Kate, so I thought I would
Yeah, I love
throw
them.
the conspiracy out there. There's something going on at the
Yeah, and I would have to
with the
say,
royal
it's like,
family.
oh, I love them. I'll have to find out.
Yeah.
The one downside of divorcing Mark was that I'm no longer in the loop, because he's pretty much in the loop of current stuff, and I'm no longer in the loop. So it's like, and it's tax season, so it's like I'm kind of
Oh,
oblivious to what's
right,
happening in the
right.
world at the moment. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's like,
so we have like whistleblowers like David Grush, who has come
uh-huh,
forward and given
uh-huh,
testimony in the congressional hearings. And
uh-huh.
so, can we expect other whistleblowers, do you think, just from talking to your ex about his work? Do you think he might come forward and speak to Congress, or has he already? I know that there have been a
Well,
number that have
he's
come
in
forward, but
prison.
oh,
He's
right,
the one in
yeah,
prison, so he's not going
okay,
anywhere.
okay, okay.
So, and I doubt Congress wants to hear from him.
Hey,
A lot of them do not like him. Um,
okay. So what happened? What got him into prison? Did it have to do with the alien?
I think so.
His alien activity?
Publicly, he was convicted falsely of masterminding a murder that happened in Marin County, California in
Wow.
1982.
Okay.
The kids that were working for his cover business, because he had like a remodeling business, as you always have to
Yes.
have a cover. Anyway, the kids that were working for him supposedly killed somebody. He supposedly masterminded the whole thing and helped them
Oh my
dump the
gosh.
body. And then the body floated up. So, they said, "Oh, it's his. He made us do it." So that's a whole big mess. So all this circumstantial evidence, I firmly believe he was somewhere else doing something for the military. Do I have proof of that? No, I just firmly believe it. And if you read the transcripts and stuff, it's just a rotten case, and just, there's no physical evidence of him being involved except the kids using certain construction materials to tie the body up or like make it float, or like, because they put it in the bay there. So it's all circumstantial that he got convicted, but he got convicted of first-degree murder and is serving life without parole. So um yes, but on the back side of that, number one, I believe he was serving the military during the day when that happened. Number two, I know that he's pissed off political leaders, and Bechtel, for example, is a huge corporate entity that's very involved in this stuff, and not always on the side of the friendly aliens. They'll work for whoever pays them. um, but he's pissed off a lot of people in doing his military work the way he does it. And there was a rescue mission that he was involved with in 1979 that made people, I mean, the rescue mission was brilliant. It pissed off a lot of people who were allowing aliens to be in this area doing horrible things to humans. And certain small faction of the military decided to go rescue as many people as they could. Well, that pissed off a lot of people. So he's pissed off enough people that I have no doubt that somehow they either allowed the circumstances of this person's death to be a great cover and say, this is a good way to get rid of him, or they orchestrated the whole thing to frame him. So I don't know the legalities of it. I just know the case is wonky, and I've read it all. So there's other people who disagree with me, but we'll just let that go. But,
Yeah.
so it's very sad, and he is a military hero. It just turns out he wasn't great spouse material. So, but
Okay,
I
so
will give him full credit for what he did for the military.
yeah, so I've one of our group is asking, was that rescue
Yeah,
mission in Dulce?
it was the Dulce mission, and I've spoken at a Dulce conference like twice now about that, and it's a horrible place. It's a horrible place, and lots of bad things happened, and they went in and out in an hour, rescued about 3,500 like women and children, blew up something that caused the base to be closed for quite a while. So the operations had to go somewhere else, and they had to, many victims had to be left there because they couldn't save everybody. And they also captured a
Right.
couple of UFOs, so that was cool. And our raptor friends came and helped them at the end of that. But he, it's interesting because a lot of people, when I um, share the bit that he's allowed me to share, because a group of people were asked to write a report about it or bring it all together. So like they gleaned all this information about what
Right.
researchers had been studying and all this kind of stuff, and then it was to be presented to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Well, he was
Right.
asked to help edit it, so a lot of the whole story is edited out because civilians, the Joint Chiefs of Staff and civilians can't read it. So I have just a little bit, and I was selling that through my nonprofit, and I spoke about it at the conference. But he didn't want to talk about it hardly ever. And he said it's horrible, and it was horrible what was going on there, just horrible, and he doesn't want to remember it. And so like people used to question me, it's
Wow.
like, well, he can't remember what the walls or the floors look like. I go, he was there rescuing people. Who cares what the walls look like? Who cares what level 4 looked like versus the walls of level 5? I don't care. That's not what's important. You get the women out, get the children out, save them.
Right. Right.
So yes, that's what that was. Yeah.
Wow. So is the base still there?
I think the base is probably there. I don't
Yeah.
know what's going on there. I know they closed
Right.
operations, and then years later, probably after Mark's dad got killed off and probably after Mark was in prison, they brought some of it back. So there might still be some stuff going on. I know when I went to Dulce to speak, and I was, I became good. Well, I became friends with some of the Apaches who live on the reservation there, and they're just wonderful people. But oh yeah, we see UFOs flying in there all the
They
time.
do. They
I
do
know.
all
Yeah,
the
yeah,
time.
and
All
there's
the
a lot of
time.
Bigfoot stuff
That's right.
there because the Bigfoot are there to protect the base. And it's like, yeah, we just sit outside our front door, and it's the UFOs are just going in, and the natives there have fabulous stories about things they've seen, and oh, this little being, or this being, was at the edge of the cave and my husband saw it one day. And it's like, it's so lovely to hear their stories and just hear their experiences. So I can't vouch to what's going on there. A lot of those operations are, could be still going on there, but I know they also took them to other places around the earth and also
Yes.
off planet. So, they're never going to stop doing horrible things.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
what do you think's going? Do you think that there will ever get to a point where we have open contact where everybody just absolutely knows that this is real because they're walking around living among us?
I don't know. I know that before COVID, some
Right.
of the really friendly species were hoping to speed things up because like there's a great dog species that has a base in Australia. They want and they trade and they export things to space and they would like us to be their clients because they're all about being merchants. The raptors would love to have open contact with us and then COVID hit and COVID they had to leave the planet because COVID would have been probably worse for them, at least as bad or worse for them than it was for us. So, but there are species who want full disclosure. But like, for example, the raptors, they like I said, they help the military. So if for example, um, things in Syria that were so bad years ago
Right.
hadn't gotten better because the raptors were helping us with that. They would have had to show themselves in a more visible way, a much
Right.
bigger show of defending things. If things, and I know things haven't ended in the Ukraine, but I guess if things had gotten worse or different, or if whichever bad aliens are helping Putin's forces, if things were different, then if the Raptors had to come in and really help us in a big way, um, it would be ugly, and that's really not how they want disclosure. Because now you've got, oh, look at the bad Raptors, and they're having a battle, blah blah blah. So that's not the way the Empress wants disclosure for us and for them. They want it to be friendly. And like I love to tell people, like I was in England one time and walking past a real estate office and saw this beautiful manor home, not a castle, just a really big, like Georgian era home, and fully
Right.
remodeled. It's like out in the country, big gardens, an extra little cottage. It's like, oh, and I was half teasing Mark. I said, we need to write a check. We need this house. All the grandkids could come here. Here's a cottage for our friend to live in, or we could do retreats and workshops. There's a lavender field out there for the aliens to land in. There's a paddock for the horses. It's like, and there's a garden. I just want to sit and have tea with everybody and just talk about what everybody's culture is like. And I'm
Yeah.
very honored to say that I have a raptor sorceress as one of my spirit guides. So if I'm
Wow.
giving a talk in public, she's usually behind me, and I've talked to her a little bit. I can't speak raptor, so I don't communicate with her a lot, but I know she's there, and I often talk to her whether I don't hear anything back, but I talk to her. So yeah, there are species who do want disclosure. It's just I don't, and I think again what I was going with that timeline is um, the timeline that Mark had written out for somebody else, but I have it in one of my reports was like in 2020. What year is it now? 2024. Okay, I think it was like in
I was going
2030.
to say 2023. Isn't that terrible?
Yeah, okay. It is only the 2000s, right? I don't know what year it is. Um, but it's like in 2031, because I don't think it was going to be 2131, but I think maybe 2031, they were
Right.
going to set a date for disclosure. It's like, oh, please. And yes, we're
Right.
getting close to
Right.
that, but it's like they weren't going to say, and in 2031, we're going to have disclosure. It's like, well, just set a date to talk about, it's like, oh. So
Right.
I have no confidence in the government making this happen, but we also don't want it to be the scene of a giant battle where we're fearing for our lives and oh yeah, oh look, there's aliens and I'm about to die. You know, you don't want this or this one coming, that are very
Right.
unfriendly and who will eat you. You don't want them to be your first experience with aliens in person. So
Yeah, sometimes I just look at humanity in general. I mean, you brought up Ukraine. There are plenty of hot spots all around the world where some really egregious things are happening. We
yeah.
are, as humans, being just so barbaric to our own human family. And it just makes me wonder why would any other species out there even want to have contact with us?
I'll,
We're
I'll tell.
awful. We're awful overall. We're
Yes,
greedy
but we don't
and
have to be. And
we
I will.
don't have to be.
We
That's
don't have to
right.
be. And I'll tell you. And like part of, I gave a talk in October, and I
Yeah.
feel, part of my personal growth and education is like I fully now embrace. It's like humans. We have this galactic connection with the
Yes.
aliens, with the fairies, with the witches, and as people. And many of the alien species are very spiritual, and
Yes.
they believe in infinite abundance, and
Yeah.
everybody's connected no matter what you look like, no matter if you can communicate or not. Um, and that the universe is just this amazing, abundant place where, we all fit and we can all get along. We need to respect each other and realize that we're all amazing creatures. We don't have to look alike, we don't have to speak the same language, and we certainly don't have to believe in any particular higher power the same way as the other one does. But if we could just raise ourselves up, because many of them are obviously way more evolved than we
Yes.
are on a spiritual plane, and just be open, have an open mind is what I'm getting at, and embrace the connectedness that we have with all these species. I think we get along better. So,
I
and
like that.
we'd be more, disclosure might happen quicker. We'd be
Yes.
closer to disclosure. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I think that that's a really good point that, we have to lift ourselves up and each other up before we
Yeah.
can ask our cosmic galactic brothers and sisters and
Yeah. And they want us to interact with them. I've been given
yes.
some information about that. They do want us
Oh, I
to.
want to hear about
Well,
this.
it's just that they do want us to interact with them and be part of their community, but we gotta,
Yes.
lift ourselves up a bit, and but we have to raise ourselves to their level. They're not going to come down to our level, so we need to work on that. And getting out, and it's spring here now, but it's like I love just getting out and walking, not with my phone. I don't look at it. I just count my steps with my phone. But it's like I'm out there communing with nature, because that is such a huge connection for me, like with the planet and with other beings, even if I can't see
Yes.
them. So yeah, that's one of my best
Ah.
go-to things.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think
Yeah.
that's really beautiful. I love being out in nature. It's important to me too. I'm a beekeeper, so
Oh,
got my
you are?
honeybees.
Oh,
Yes.
cool. Well, and
Yeah.
I live near several parks, and it's like, I mean, my neighborhood is beautiful, but I also live near several parks, so I can walk and be in the forest in like 5 minutes, and it's just
Ah.
there's nothing better than, it's like, and I don't know how we're doing on time, but it's like one day, I think we'd had a big storm, but then it's like, okay, I got to get out and walk, and I'm just going to go to the edge of the park and then back. That's a good loop. And the forest
Yeah.
just kept calling me in and calling me in, and I just kept going deeper and deeper until there was a big tree that had fallen over the path, and I was like, I'm not going to go that
Oh.
past that. But it was just so beautiful to have the forest call me in, and just and just it was amazing.
Ah, that's
That was a beautiful
awesome.
moment.
Wow.
That
So
was a
what's
beautiful
next for
moment.
you, JoAnn? You've got a new book coming out and I want to tell everybody read JoAnn's book, Midlife
Yeah,
Magic. It's a very magical
thank you,
account
sweetie. Thank
of
you.
her whole life history and how she got to where she is now. Lots of UFOs in there, gang. So
There
you're going to want
is,
to
and my
read this.
paranormal and my fairy stuff, and that's I wrote that
I
under
love
Joanne
it. Love it.
Richards. So the new
Yes.
book is called The Prince Was Wrong, Leaving the Narcissist Behind. And that's by this is my maiden name, so that's what I'm writing under now. And it is all about narcissistic abuse. It'll be out in June and July. I'm semi-retiring in a few months because I'll be turning 70, and so that's something to look forward to. Grandma will have more time to have some fun, and I'm attracting new wonderful people into my life, and that's fun. And I like I said, I want to help people heal from their toxic relationships because that's what has made a big impact on my life, letting that just go and finding joy in life. So that's what I'm about. Retirement is
Awesome.
calling.
Well, thank you so much for spending
Thank
this time with
you.
us.
Oh,
Your UFO
delightful.
stories are absolutely incredible, and I know it's given us all a lot of food for thought. And I know everyone's out there Googling Dulce now and finding out what's up there. Gang, we're going to do a field trip to Dulce. I think our group should do that. So,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's 4 hours. I used to drive it. It's 4 hours from
yeah,
Albuquerque, and the people there are so lovely.
they are wonderful,
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah. The people are
Yeah.
lovely. They're very welcoming. So
They are.
yeah.
So thank you, JoAnn. I am
Thank
very grateful
you.
for your presence here.
Thank
And
you for having me. Yeah.
yeah, we'll have to have you on again after your
Oh,
next book comes out.
I
And
love that because
yeah,
I have found a joy in writing, so I'm not going to stop.
that is great.
Yeah. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much, and
much.
thank you to your group. So keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you. And everyone, I'm sure, is going to love watching this either live now or on the replay. So,
Okay, great, great.
yeah, thanks,
Thank you.
JoAnn. You
Okay.
have a wonderful evening.
You too.
Thanks, and everybody, love you all. And we will see you on our next live stream, which will be on Friday. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.